Hello and welcome to Steve's Backyard Bonsai. Today I'm going to be taking some of my deciduous trees in and having a look at them for structure. Many of them have lost their leaves already. This particular one, this royal oak, this was one that was grown from a seed, from an acorn collected by Tony of Tony's Bonsai and sent to Matt Brennan. And Matt Brennan germinated it, got it going, and sent it to me. This tree is beautiful. I'm not sure that I'm going to prune it today, but I am going to discuss where I think this tree is going. It still has a lot of chlorophyll in the leaves, so I think it's doing the roots a lot of good. This will be the first Long Island winter it spends. Is that true? You know what? I don't remember when I got this tree. I'll have to look. So let's get started. I have this tree to look at first. I've got 1, 2, 3 Ginkgo biloba to look at. 1 cherry alone in a pot, very strange tree. My cherry trio, my Toringo crabapple, and my American hornbeam. If I don't get through this all in one video, I'll make 2 videos out of it. Let's get started. All right. Never did pick a front for this tree, but I'm going to start by just going through and cutting back any pruning stubs from the last time around. Here's one. Here's one. Here's another. Could that be it? Oh, one more right here. All right. So, what I'm used to seeing and what's littering my backyard right now are these beautiful oak leaves. Many are a bit smaller, but most are bigger than this. So for me to see a variety of oak with leaves as small as this, and these are, this is the old leaf on the tree right here, this one, compared to what I'm used to seeing. They've still got a lot. This is all waxy and dried and falling off the trees in droves. These are still supple and green and producing good sugars for the winter ahead. Oh, I just saw another pruning stub. There we go. All right. So what am I going to do with this tree? Well, I was looking at it before, and I'm thinking, what if this were the apex of this particular trunk, and I chopped this back? Do I like that? Well, in this view, that's growing out, but in this view, it's growing straight toward me. So that could be okay. And in this view, it becomes kind of a back apex. I don't want this to be a tall tree, but I want it to be dense. And I see it is a slow-growing tree. This is the new growth, and I pruned it back midsummer. If that were the apex there, and I could make this the apex of this trunk, I could cut this one back to here, actually maybe even further, and start by cutting that big leaf off. And there was one other I wanted to cut off, this one. So what do I let grow? And this would be nice. It's very straight with no taper. The only opportunity I have to give it some taper is right here. So I think when these leaves drop, and if I remember, I'm going to cut this one back to here, let it die back, and let this become the leader of that branch. Not going to touch anything else. Would like to see some back buds here. but I don't see any evidence of that. There's a leaf scar down here, but whether or not there's a viable bud, I don't know. So if I do that over there, I would want to make this the apex of this trunk. This one twists around nicely. I might eliminate this branch right here. And if this is the apex, maybe I eliminate this entire top. Cut the tip off of this. Yeah, that's an option. But this one's going back out on the bench. If you have any other suggestions for this tree, drop it in the comments. I'd appreciate it. I'd love to see what people have to say. There's another leaf I want to take off. I always do this. Let me take off this one too. Trying not to damage the bud. Take off a leaf here, one here, and this one here. Less cluttered, still making chlorophyll. This thing will be losing its leaves shortly. All right, let's move on to my small leaf Ginkgo biloba. All right, you'll have to forgive me. I did cut a couple of branches, little sections off before I pressed go. I'm just looking over to make sure I just did it again. Didn't do it again. And a little piece here. So what I want to do is just show you the difference between my full-size Ginkgo biloba, which grows outside, and also one in a pot that I'm going to be working on. These are pretty much comparable and pretty much an average of what you see on those trees. This tree, by comparison, here's the largest leaf that has fallen off of this tree, and they are more typically like this. So this species is called Ginkgo biloba Fockerts Select, F-O-C-H-E-R-T-S Select, and it is grafted. It's wonderful. I wanted to see if I could find a small leaf ginkgo, and this fit the bill. It is grafted, and from the front view that I have set up there, you can see the graft pretty well. I'm hoping that blends in. I had wanted to ground layer this, but after the disaster I had with my Texas ebony, I'm shying away from ground layering for a little while. Although that's what this tree needs. You know, this rootstock sends up large leaf ginkgo, which, you know, I have to eradicate whenever it sends it up. I have cut back the part that sends up the new growth. I cut it back because it was ugly, and it's still ugly. I did want to have an exposed rootstock on this, so this bowl or this tray or this pot has a like a luncheon plate sitting at this level. Can you see that? Sitting at this level inside, humped up, so the roots have nowhere to go but to fill this space. So I did want to work on a root base eventually on this tree, but I wanted it to spread out a little. It's only been in this pot for, I think, this season. Yeah, it's only been in this pot for this season, and I wanted to develop a root base. So with that as the front, let me go back to it. Right about there for you. I don't want to go too far because then this obscures the trunk behind it. about like that. You can still see the shari. This goes to the inside. I talked about taking it off completely, but then I chickened out. There's a bud down here, and maybe I can get this to grow downward in this direction. It does still cross the trunk, but I chickened out. I was going to cut it here. I might still. Problem is, I don't have any bifurcation up here, and I don't want to risk not having any bifurcation. So maybe I'm going to cut it to the upward facing bud because the internodes are very short here. Leaving some for dieback. And here I have up and down, hoping to get 2 bifurcations here. I'm going to trim this pruning stub a little bit nicer. Up here, this is another one I cut. I cut it to here because I have an upward facing bud, and these buds look really nice. This is a pruning stub. This branch grows to the inside, but it's the inside of my apex, so I do have a bud back here. Does that help me any? If I get a branch growing there. This is pruned to a bud on the top, and it doesn't seem to have gone anywhere. So I'm going to take it back. I'm not happy with the direction there, but we'll see. And I'm going to take this one back to here. I have an outward facing bud, or frontward facing bud, which might be nice. And this branch back here, I'm going to take it to this bud here. This went up tall and straight. Doesn't look all that great. But maybe if I cut it to here, I can improve it. Here's a pruning stub on this branch. This one was pruned, and looks like there's a bud there, but it didn't do anything. Do I want it to? Actually, it would be nice to have a branch there. I'm going to leave it in case it does do something, because the alternative here is to cut this here. Well, not the alternative, that's the intention, to cut this here so that this grows in this direction. This is a young tree. And I want to get it started right. The foliage is just beautiful, and the golden color right before they all fell on one day. They were all in this tray. All right, so this branch, I'm going to go way back on this branch. Okay, this will go back outside after I get some cut paste on those wounds. And I'm going to move on to my larger leaf ginkgo in a pot. Here's my large leaf ginkgo biloba from seed. I'm just removing some moss from the trunk because this makes it look like it was grafted, but it was not. There is some significant erosion to the bark, unfortunately, when you let the moss grow up like this. I gotta say, I looked at it a few times over the season and said, I've got to pull that back, and never did. So bad on me. I'll try and speed through the boring bits. Okay, that's got that cleared up. Let's look at the structure. Okay, this is the side that was scarred the most. I can probably still work on it, but this isn't too bad here. If that were just a little more rounded. And it has, I guess you could say it's begun to roll over. There's a very thick outer layer of bark, and the heartwood There's a little bit of separation between the bark layer and the heartwood. It's interesting, but I don't know. All right, let me clean up this stub. It's a nicer transition. And Ginkgo biloba look like they might be sending out a branch, but actually these are 2 leaves with a bud down here. Now that could be a branch. I don't know. I did cut it here, maybe hoping for something to grow from there. And you know, it might just do it if I do that. So that would grow in an outward direction, and I would trim this back, and that would start to flatten this branch out, which is nice. And this one, I often go down below where I've cut originally because I don't like what I'm seeing growing there. And these leaves are just coming off, so I'm not worried that this is too early, because all I got to do is touch these and they fall. So it was time. All right, so I cut that there. I got a sort of an outward facing bud there. I got one facing the back here, but I don't know, maybe cutting this down will kill 2 birds with 1 stone. All right, this branch comes up. I've got a big dieback here. I'll continue to clean that up. But it went up really straight with no buds until up here. This one goes in, this one died back. But there's a leaf developing there, which is, if this is the front, that's towards the outside. Pruning stub here. Clean up a little bit. And I've got 2 buds, one on the inside, one on the outside right there. That looks like a good place to go back to. And what's going on here? A bud back here that would fill in this area if it became a branch, and a bud here. When spring comes, I want this tree to do wonderful things. Is this a wonderful thing? A branch there. A branch here and here would be wonderful, so I'm going to see if I can stimulate that by cutting that off. All right. I don't think I can do much more to my large leaf Ginkgo biloba. And in case you didn't know, biloba refers to a bilobe leaf. Even this is bilobe. Taking away a little bit more moss. I'll give it a spin around and you can tell me what you think. But be kind. That's the front. You know, I'm setting this up for the future. I want fine branching, and I want a sort of an upright tree that's like this. So that's what I'm going to be going for. This is unfortunate, this big space here. But maybe something will grow from there. All right, next tree is another ginkgo. I don't know what I'm going to do with that one, but whatever it is, we'll do it together. Okay, the story behind this tree is I had collected a pocket full of ginkgo biloba seeds that I found on the ground in downtown Berkeley, California, actually up by campus. And my wife and I were about to have lunch, a nice little cafe, and I just put a bunch of seeds in my pocket. Not the fruit. I'm smart enough not to do that. Those smell quite foul, but these were dried seeds. Anyway, I put them in a pot when I got home, and none of them sprouted. So I gave up at some point and used the soil for something else, and lo and behold, this was growing in that soil. Now I've got leaf scars here, and of course it bifurcated way up here. Let me just clean that up a little bit. So I've got a choice. I can do a cutback and try and get a small tree, or I can develop the canopy from here. I've got a bud there, maybe some branch will grow there. And I don't think I'm going to do anything to this tree. I'm going to see what it gives me next year. It's in a triagami pot, and the roots do come out and they dry up. When I had this on a bed of sand, there were nice roots going into the bed of sand, but I think I'm preferring it to spread out and just air dry or air prune on the bottom. That was a quick one. Let's move on to my small cherry, the weird one. Look, this one was next to the ginkgo on the bench. Look at those little ginkgo leaves. I find that very cute. All right, so this cherry fell, broke, healed itself, all with no intervention from me. So it healed here very nicely. It grew up another stem. I am enamored of any tree that doesn't die when you think it's going to die. So this has become my weird little cherry. It was just a pruning stub there. And one here. And one here. All of this is alive, even though this looks a little peaked here. But no branching, just here. The only place I got branching happening. These leaves are not quite ready to fall off, but I think since they're turning a beautiful pink, red, greenish something, I think I might want to cut this back a little bit. There's nothing I can do to fix this except for cut it off, and I'm just not willing to do that. Well, that would be an interesting... no, it wouldn't. I'm going to cut this back to here to stimulate that bud. It's not really in a great position, but maybe it'll give me some branching. Same there. This I'm going to let extend if it wants to. And this, I'm just going to cut this leaf off. Oh, didn't have to cut anything. How about this? Yeah. These two aren't ready. Really do want to cut that one back. Why not? Have a nice winter sleep, my little weird cherry. Let's see what you do in the spring.